one task that I have that I can do while I'm waiting for other parts to arrive is cleaning up this wiring. Right now the wiring is functional, so I have a general idea of where things are going to go, so I can start laying things out. One task is to decide where the ECU is going to go. Now, on a lot of Volkswagens, I think actually all modern Volkswagens, the ECU is mounted under a cowl in the engine bay. An issue that Volkswagen has had a lot with that is that water gets in there and corrodes connections and ruins things. So I've already tested the length of the wire. So you can see down here, the ECU leads come in through here through the firewall. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the ECU under where I've mounted the Passat relay box. This is general junction, actually, just a lot of this is used as a terminal in some cases. So if I grab the ECU, you'll see that past all the wiring, you can see that this will this will fit back here, just like that. Now, the other issue with that is that the ECU, is it? Yeah, just like that. So the other issue, and you also notice that, so here's the pedal, and there is plenty of room for my fit to hit the pedal and such without hitting the cables or coming anywhere close to the ECU. And I have size 13 or so. So to do that, if we look at the ECU, we'll notice that there isn't really much to mount it on. I looked at the stock Passat mounting mechanism, and it's essentially a black box with a clip that holds this down. It's not the greatest, which would be fine if it wasn't like weirdly shaped and would be able to fit, which it really can't. There are some there are these guys here, which are added so that the backing screws have something to thread into. But I think adding a mechanism to clip onto these is probably overkill. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably add slightly longer screws to these guys and take some aluminum. So in this case we have some pretty I'm not sure exactly what gauge it is. It's very thin, 0.019 inches. So we'll take this. So the ECU will screw to this upside down like this, right? And then I'll make a mount which mounts to the screw holes, which you can see on either side of this bracket here. And then we might cut off this tab to make this flat, make this flush. And then I'll add some something to help with vibration, some rubber rubber things around the screws or something. So this is will be the back side of the mount, right? So I'm worried the ECU might hang down a little bit. So the other side of the mount for the ECU, you can't see in the camera, but there are some holes on the side here. So perhaps the mount will actually look kind of like an L shape with the ECU sitting in the center. And that will be our ECU mount. Now, for the rest of the wiring, it's going to be another task. The battery wiring is zip tied to cage, which I think is fine for Rally America and NASA. The other wiring is, so we have like the OBD2 connection. I have to mount that somewhere. The fuse box, I think is in a good position. The driver can change the fuses easily, but there's no door. I have no idea what all the fuses are. So it might be a good idea to get an actual race fuse box and wire all of these into it with more generic labels and stuff, or I'll keep this and put a door on it with all the fuse labels. We have the wiring coming from the back of the car, which has connectors for the fuel pump and so on. This is for the fuel pump. This is ground for, I believe, the fuel pump, even though it's also ground to the body. I am not sure why they were required to have an explicit ground for that. But and then all for the brake lights and everything. And these will tie into this section of the harness that I've made here. This is actually for the front lights. This is a nice waterproof connector. But yeah, so we're working on making this mount out of aluminum, and then we can also figure out, so that's another speaking of mounting, there's another issue, and that is that since the brake reservoir is now up here, what I'll be doing is mounting, sorry, not the brake reservoir, the master cylinder is now in the car with the clutch to drive the O2J transmission, or a fork in the O2J bell housing. What I'll do is probably mount the remote reservoir for the clutch fluid in the car as well, unless the hose that comes with it fits in the engine bay, or I can get some cheap hose that will reach. But that's just another thing I have to consider mounting. So this should be next. So fun fact, Volkswagen made this mount the perfect size so that my CAD template would fit on the 23rd time. And if we take the ECU now, we can see that this will fit here, and it will bolt to this plate, which I will be mocking up. So here's the ECU mounted to the new bracket. You can see that I made use of the 4 bolts that were already in the ECU itself, and then there are spacers to ensure that the backing for this box is still flush with the rest of the casing. So this mounts like this under the fuse box, just like that. So we can install this now and see how it looks. So now the ECU is now installed with a custom aluminum bracket. It's bolted in with the 2 bolts in the back here, and it seems fairly rigid. I may add a zip tie or something here just to help it hold, but I think in most circumstances it's going to be pretty fine. It's not the easiest thing to get in and out, but it's not terribly important right now. Ideally, I cut out this whole bracket and I can make something that uses the space more efficiently. So this can move up a couple inches and it may actually move out a little bit, but and that's fine.